Okay. Morning, everyone. Thank you for joining our Prime Making Tax Digital webinar. Quick introduction of those that are on the call. So I'm Paul Guise. I'm the Director of Accounts at Prime Accountants, head up our accounts team. Sat next to me is Sarah Hill. She's our Business Services Senior Manager, is an expert in all things zero. On the call is Paisley Godley, is our Tax Compliance Director and head of our tax team. And also joining us, we have Matthew Baldwin from Xero, who's going to do a little presentation later on and just show us a quick overview of the Xero software. We're looking at about an hour, hopefully. We will leave the chat function open. So if you have any questions as we go through, please pop those into the chat. And then when we get to the end of the webinar, we'll open it up to questions. And we can also then review the questions that have been raised through the chat as we go through. So I'll just share my slides. There we go. So as I've done the introductions, myself, Paisley, Sarah, Matthew. Paisley, I'm just going to hand over to you then now. If you could just do a quick introduction on actually what is Making Tax Digital and what the legal requirements are.
Thanks, Paul. Good morning, everyone. So it's really just an introduction to MTD for income tax. So why have we got this comment? So ordinarily, HMRC are looking to modernise the tax system and bring that into line with what we've got as MTD for VAT now. And the best way to do that is go for MTD with income tax. Primarily, you'd think this is all about, nicer records, digital record keeping. It's all of that. So it's aimed to get the taxpayers being more accurate with their records, more efficient and timely with their reporting. But primarily as well, they're aiming to close the tax gap that they've found creeping in over the years with people claiming things they shouldn't be. And by doing MTD for income tax, they can see throughout the course of the year with quarterly filings what actually is happening with people's records. As part of MTD for income tax, the main thing of this is the digital record keeping. In the current system that we have, we do a tax return after the tax year has happened. Throughout the year, you're going to have to do quarterly reporting with your records at that time. So as you can see on my first slide there, we go from the quarterly report. So it starts from the 6th of April of a tax year, and we've just gone into the first cohort going into MTD. The first return is going to be due by the 7th of August. So you'll have your first quarter that will have to be filed by the 7th of August, and then quarterly from that point in time. It then means it doesn't do away with the tax return system. That is still around. We've still got to do the 4 quarterly returns and submit a digital tax return at the end of it to close it off with everything that you've filed today and with all of the other income that you've got to bring into play with it from your self-employment or your land and property. What is interesting with this as well is the first year we're going in, HMRC are bringing in a soft landing. You have to file these returns. There's no way of getting out of it. There are penalties. As I say, the soft landing is in play for this first year we're going into now, but that doesn't do away with the tax return filing penalty at the end of the year. There's more to come on penalties down the line. As I say, I'm not going to go too much into that now, but the penalty system is changing as well in the next year when it comes to MTD as a result of this with tax returns. The first cohort going into MTD is obviously just started from April. It's bringing in everybody that has a total gross turnover of £50,000. Now that is combined turnover. So if you are a sole trader and a land and property owner that's renting out a property, that £50,000 is your total combined income. So you could have £25,000 of gross turnover self-employment and £25 gross rent from rental income. The two together make the 50. That would bring you in from April this year. That means you will start to now need to keep digital records through a software and do your first quarterly return by the 7th of August. As part of this, you will have to register for MTD as well. Now, anyone brought in from April should have had a letter from HMRC already. They are basing this on your last tax return. So your 24-25 tax return dictated whether you came in from April or not. So that £50,000 limit is relevant to your last tax return submitted. If you haven't had a letter today, it's likely you're not affected from April. You'll come into the next year if your income is over £30,000. Same principle again. You look at the total turnover between your stream of income, self-employment, land and property, or the two together. And then gradually you'll see from April 28, they're lowering the limit again to £20,000. Essentially, they're looking to bring as many people in as possible to this. So it could be that £20,000 limit goes down even further to say 10 down the line. It's so basically what we have to think about with all of this is obviously getting you up to date with the software, making sure you're compliant. If you're not caught until April 27, April 28, there's no registration that you need to do now, but be mindful this is coming. It could be that you need to actually start thinking about getting into a routine to keep your digital record keeping now. There are exemptions in place, and if you think that something could apply to you, I'd say reach out. It's something that we could check into in as every circumstance is different. And there are certain pages on a tax return that trigger exemptions as well. So it's something that we could discuss with anybody that had any questions over that. I think going through as we'll go, obviously we'll go into the zero stuff. If there's any questions over how the interaction with the MTD and zero and the tax side of things, I'm more than happy to then ask any questions after.
Right, thanks, Paisley. So I suppose what do you need to do to get ready for MTD? As Paisley's already said, if you've already had a letter from HMRC, it's based on your 25 tax return data, so that would indicate that you are eligible for it and would need to start recording digital records. If you've got any doubts, as Paisley said, please contact us. But first point is understand your eligibility. Are you in MTD or are you deferred for a year or two? Second step is obviously to switch to digital record keeping. Avoid spreadsheets where possible because that won't make you MTD compliant. Please check the Revenue's website for what the software you are proposing to use is MTD compliant. Obviously, we have Matthew on call today from Xero, and we would recommend using Xero as our primary MTD compliant software. There are other softwares that you may wish to look at, but they need to be MTD compliant. That information is held on the Revenue's website. If you have any doubts about that, please contact us and we will be able to check that for you. Importantly, I suppose, is organise your finances. So ideally, separate personal and business information so that they're not all flowing through the same business accounts, which is something that we see quite commonly with smaller businesses. Xero's bank feed feature would ideally be there for you to connect a business account to Xero and only have your business information flowing through Xero and then into your digital record. You'll need to keep a digital record of your receipts and your invoices as part of that process, and you'll need to categorise your income and expenses into the relevant categories of a sole trader business or a property business if you have both. If you also have property businesses with multiple properties, it may also be a good option to categorise the properties out into your individual properties, and actually what we would call tracking is track the income and expenses against all of those individual properties, which again is something that we can come to later on this webinar, and Matthew will touch on that when he goes through his slides. Importantly, I think talk to us, talk to prime accountants, talk to your account manager, your account director, your main contact within Prime, and we can point you in the right direction. We can help you choose the software. We can help you with the training. Sarah is one of our Xero specialists, and she can help you with the Xero training and getting the subscription set up and going through the process of how to use Xero, more importantly. It isn't as big a burden as most people think it is. And I think once you start to get into that process of doing the record keeping, I'm sure you will find it will become much easier for you. Understand how MTD affects your tax planning. Obviously, what we're now looking at is a quarterly reporting regime. Revenue are not asking for quarterly payments of tax at this stage, but this is a really good opportunity for those businesses to start looking at having more regular in-year accounts that they can see on a quarterly basis that will then inform them as they go through the year how much tax they may have to pay when they come to the end of the tax year. So that ability to see the information from Xero as you go through the tax year is going to give you a lot more information on how the business is performing and then how much tax you're going to likely have to pay when you get to the tax year. So that is a really important piece of information about why this is going to suit you going forward, probably from how you're doing things at the moment. Stay informed, keep on top of our newsletters, keep up to date with our socials, our LinkedIn channels, our website. There'll be lots of information coming out with regards to Making Tax Digital. Similar for anything that comes out from HMRC. If you get any further letters, please don't ignore them. Keep on top of that. Keep on top of all of the social channels and all of the media, and just make sure that as we go through this process, you're well informed on everything that's going to happen. What to look for in terms of MTD compliant software, as I've said, you've got to make sure it's compliant with HMRC, and there is a list. Now, Xero is probably the best piece of software, we believe, that's going to help you with your MTD journey. It is hugely user-friendly. There are different levels of subscriptions, but the base subscription is very fairly priced. It does connect in with HMRC system, obviously. It does connect in with bank feeds. It does have a mobile app that will allow you to basically do your work on the go, keep track of invoices and receipts, photo those on your smartphone if you wish, and upload them into Xero, and keep those digital records essentially that you need to keep as part of this process. I will probably now, at this point, I think it'd be a great opportunity to hand over to Matthew, and he can share his slides and just talk us through more about Xero and what Xero does for Making Tax Digital.
Lovely, thank you very much. So, just because I appreciate people in the room on the webinar may not have come across Xero, you may have seen marketing and maybe, well, I found out recently it's become pub talk for certain clients, like certain people. I don't know how that's come up down the pub, but we are now. So what I'm going to sort of 20 minutes or so, quick whistle stop tour through these slides, just go over what is Xero, essentially different features in it for you, which will make your life a lot easier. And we'll go through that and a little bit of a Q&A at the end to cover off any MTD questions and also any sort of Xero questions on there. So what is Xero? We're, well, the leading global platform to help small businesses and their advisors. So at the moment, we're the most used software to submit VAT returns in the UK. So we're going for that title for MTD for income tax as well. We've been in the UK now since 2013. We're originally from New Zealand, so Kiwi company. And where we're at the moment is we're at 1.3 million subscribers as of September last year in the UK. There's 180 different territories where it's used. There's over 300 direct connections to banks. So whoever you bank with, we should be able to get a bank feed. Some banks are more difficult than others to get feeds. And you can see here, New Zealand, it says started in 2009, but realistically, the boom started in 2013 for it. So 20 years ago, the norm in just general life was Nokia, BlackBerry phones, the Nokia 3310, vinyls and CDs. I know vinyls are making a bit of a revival at the moment and maybe ruining this slide for me. But then you've also got Blockbuster, which I've got fond memories of growing up. And today, when we look at it, everything's gone to a digital first side of things. So iPhone, social media, no BlackBerry Messenger, BBM anymore. You've got Spotify and also Netflix. So it's happened in other industries outside of sort of the main areas, and it's moving into the accountancy and tax space for you guys for MTD, for income tax. So you can see here sort of the businesses are moving away from those traditional processes to more advanced digital processes. So the manual record keeping, you have the risk of losing receipts, and you've also got potential security breaches if you've not got your documents under lock and key. You can't actually collaborate with your accountants. So you're getting potentially, if you drop your records off in January, it's good 9 months or so since your last invoice was potentially raised. So you are waiting a while to know what your tax bill is. There's no real efficient tax plan that can be happened. And then you've got manual input and also the lack of data insight that sort of ties in with that collaboration piece. So moving forwards, what you've got, so you've got security and stability. So I have to, every morning, just as a Xero employee, I have to do about 3 different steps of multi-factor authentication to get into my laptop because of our security standards. It allows you to collaborate with your accountant, and as sort of what was alluded to earlier, is you can access it on any device. So iPads, phones, laptops, you'll be able to access it. And the big thing is the automation and how easy it is to use. Obviously, that's easy for me to say coming from the software company, but from my time, I used to be an accountant before joining Xero. I saw a lot of people which you would never expect to be able to use Xero, pick it up and start using it. Yes, it took a little bit of time, but we got there with it. So you can see here, the automation will deliver efficiencies for you. There's none of this. If we've sitting at home on a Friday, maybe writing up your invoices on Word or putting all of your receipts into a nice, neat folder, which I'm hoping you may do for Prime at the moment. But if you don't, it'd be just a case of putting all your receipts into a bag, but then trying to work out exactly what's happening with it is a bit of a struggle sometimes. So what is Xero's MTD for income tax solution? Essentially, it's available on all of these plans here, but the main one we're going to focus on is that Xero Simple package, which is for non-VAT registered sole traders and landlords. So you have bank feeds, you've got data capture built in, you've got you can send 10 invoices a month, and also it enables that collaboration with your accountant on there. So yeah, as I've sort of already gone through, it also gives you all of the reporting and also the ability to file MTD for income tax updates. So sort of what's the standard workflow for this? So you can see it sort of goes through 4 different steps on here. Step 1 is connecting your bank. Can be a little bit of hesitancy about connecting a bank feed up to accounting software. This is essentially it's basically a way to enable your accountants to get access to your bank statements. That's it. They can't make payments, they can't do anything like that. It's purely to pull transactions down from your bank. That is all. So obviously the best thing, if you are currently using your personal account for business use, is to set up a separate account for it, or else the guys at Prime will see all of your personal spending on there. And also the revenue may do if they ever do an investigation. So it's secure and an encrypted connection as well. So it's completely secure on there. There's never been a breach for bank feeds. So you're completely fine from that standpoint. And you can see the other option, if your bank for whatever reason doesn't have a connection to Xero, it may be a slightly different bank, or they don't. All banks in the UK have to have open banking connection, so it may be a foreign bank which you need to connect up. You can export out of that bank into a CSV, OFX, etc., and import it into Xero. It's still quick. It's just not as efficient as it could be. So capturing receipts, this is something slightly new. So we've now released a tool called Xero Smart Capture. It's not the most snappy name in the world, but essentially using the mobile app on your phone, you'll be able to take a photo of all of those scraggly receipts, invoices, etc., and it will extract data from it using AI. So it will extract out contact name, the amounts, the different items on different line items on the invoice, etc. And it will make suggestions to potentially where that should code to. But I would probably just double check it with the guys at Prime if you're not 100% sure where to code with it. The big benefit to using document capture tools is the ability to go paperless. So you won't need to essentially keep a whole ream of paper. So if you buy a van, you can obviously keep that original paper invoice if you want to, but it's going to be attached to the transaction inside of Xero. So if you ever have any warranty issues or anything like that with the van, you have it there for your records online. It's all safe. You can use it as a file storage system, etc. So what happens, you capture the receipt, it auto extracts it, stores it, and then there's a one-click reconciliation methodology which you can use for this. So once it's done all of it, everything it needs to do, if there's a transaction on the bank that matches what you've uploaded, there'll be a button where you can just click a match at the bottom and it will just process it straight through for you. So MTD compliance, I am going to quickly just go over what a quarterly update looks like in Xero. So you can see here, this is what the screen will look like. You can choose to send this update off, and it's a really basic INE that will get sent to the revenue. So all the revenue will get is this front page. They won't get sent anything in the background for this. They just get sent the front page of this. So all of this will be in there for you. And then when we're moving into sort of like the business insights part, I mean, this is the real sort of game changer for when you move to any form of cloud software. It doesn't necessarily need to be Xero, but is having that live data feed in. So you can run reports off to see, okay, how much profit have I made this month? Is there a particular job that you're doing at the moment which you want to see the margins on? You'll be able to track all of that through the Xero reporting, as well as getting a rough tax estimate with MTD for income tax. It will really enable you to grow your business. I've seen from sort of my time being an accountant, we moved somebody onto Xero, so we had the live feed, and they were making 50k net of tax between two directors when they were a limited company. Year 2 they went up to 120, and year 3 they went up to around 340. It's my biggest success story, which is why I can remember everything. But all that, how we enabled that was by collaborating with them, being able to sort of show the P&L, show how they're doing live, being able to track the profit levels on certain jobs, and sort of review pricing with them. And the way we've managed to do that is obviously from cloud software. But here's just a little video to show you sort of what the mobile app looks like. So when you go into here, you can see you can just create your invoices on the go. So if you are out seeing a client, you can create the invoice as and when you're doing it. And you can also reconcile the bank as you go as well on here. So going through and clicking OK. And the big one is if you are in person, as you can see there, all of the invoicing functionality on Xero, you can enable to be able to take card payments. So that was showing you tap to pay. So there are fees attributed to that through Stripe, like there would be with any card machine, but you don't need to have a separate machine or something to stick onto the back of your phone case. It's just a pure use your phone. You can take a contactless payment. If the amount's over a certain amount, it would then ask them to put their PIN in. So it's contactless and then their PIN number will go into it. So, I mean, one of the biggest ones is I've got this actually coming up this week on Friday, but a boiler service for a plumber, for example, if you were to raise a sales invoice after the fact with no payment link attached to it, it's probably going to take you longer, quite a bit longer to get paid. The amount of bad debt I've seen from plumbers doing boiler services is ridiculous, just because it leaves it too long, essentially. But I think the actual stats are people that aren't using digital software to raise their own sales invoices, the average debtor days is 66 overdue. When you start using Xero, it goes to 35. And then when you use Xero with a payment solution linked to it, it goes down to 14. So some quite big reduction in debtor days for you guys. So people not owing you money as long, just by adding essentially an option for people to pay via card on there. I appreciate that's a real whistle stop tour, and we will be doing a full in-depth training session on this potentially, or with the guys at Prime. Either we'll do a webinar or reach out to the contacts at Prime to book in a one-to-one session on there for this. And I suppose we have a few questions in the Q&A box. I don't know if we want to answer any of these ones live.
Yes, I think if we can run through those. Sarah, do you want to run through the questions?
Yeah, so we've got, how do clients register with HMRC for MTD?
Okay, I'll answer that one. So it's basically through their website. You can do it yourself. We are offering the facility to do it for clients as well. So if we were to do it, we would request the MTD registration, provide the details to do that. If we are going to be working with you on quarterly returns, we'd then link it through our agent portal as well. So we have access to be able to do that.
Okay, so, yeah. We've then got, so if that's a global income and expenditure declaration, is it automatically adding together multiple rental property data to disclose it to HMRC?
If I'm assuming me, yeah. So the multiple different rental properties on Xero, if you are using it for MTD, it will add them all together via the bookkeeping. It's a lump that basically goes to the revenue, is the best way of probably putting it. It's quite a crude way of putting it, but they get given the lump, they don't get given the breakdown per property. But if you wanted to see a P&L per property, you can do that in Xero, and you'll be able to track the profitability to help grow that portfolio.
Yeah, and I'm right in thinking, Matthew, that the sole trader and the property returns are two separate returns for Making Tax Digital.
Yeah. So if you had sole trade and rental, you would have 8 quarterly updates to do a year and 1 final declaration. So it can get quite steep quite quickly. Yeah. It can.
And I'm also, sorry, just to touch on that again. So am I also then thinking that if there is a client or a business owner that has 2 sole trader businesses, that's actually 2 separate sole trader returns as well?
Yeah. So if you have 2 sole trades, that's also 2 returns each quarter. So that would be 8 again. If you were unlucky enough to have the situation where you had 2 sole trades, UK property and foreign property income, you'd be up at 16 quarterly updates a year. So yeah.
And I think that's what they've not really advertised as much, have they? They're just marketing it as it's just a quarterly return, but it's per type of service.
It's per income stream, isn't it? Ultimately, yeah. Which for somebody that's got multiple income streams will make the process not difficult, because obviously Xero is there to help you with all of those things. But it's a lot more reporting than I think HMRC are initially suggesting at this point.
Yeah, and that's not a Xero thing, is it? That's an HMRC thing.
Yeah.
So it's no other software is going to make those submissions less, if you like. That's mandated by HMRC, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got, it may take time splitting out business and personal. Can we add in the first few months manually until we get the accounts clean to business only? So this will be talking about having both business and personal transactions going through the bank account. Yes, you can add them in manually. What I would probably suggest instead is linking the bank, and then you can delete anything out that is personal and just leave in the business items. That will be far quicker than entering all of your business transactions manually. And then obviously as you go through getting the accounts sorted out to just be in business transactions, there'll be fewer deletions that you need to do. Okay. If I have multiple incomes, will I need separate bank accounts for each type of income?
No, I think you can just have one bank account, assuming all the income streams flow through that one bank account. Xero will be able to separate those out. We could apply tracking categories to those different income streams, which is a feature within Xero, which will allow us to segregate sole trader as one income stream, property as another income stream, even multiple properties into multiple different tracking categories, so you can see the profitability of different properties, which I think would be a particularly useful feature for a landowner or a landlord. So those things can all flow through one bank account, and they can then be separated out. I guess the obvious question is, what is easier for you as a business owner? Is it easier to have them all in one account? Is it easier to have property in one account and sole trader in another one? I think the key point is the point we've raised already, which is trying to separate personal and business as an absolute, and then deciding on what is easier for you, whether you want to take that another level and separate sole trader and property even further, or whether you're happy for those to go through the same account. But Xero will separate all of those things out and give you that separate tracking and profit reporting from that.
Yeah, I think what's important to note as well is if you do have multiple bank accounts, you can add multiple bank feeds to Xero. So it's not you have to only have one bank account linked. You can have multiple bank accounts linked if you already have multiple bank accounts for your different income streams.
Yeah. And also credit cards. I think if you're a heavy credit card user and you use your credit card for a lot of business expenses, we can also link in a credit card as a bank feed.
Yeah.
And do the same process.
Okay. If you have more than one income stream, do you need a different Xero subscription for each income stream? No, it needs to be one Xero subscription, and you use tracking to categorize the income streams, because you submit via the one linked Xero subscription to HMRC, even though it is multiple submissions to HMRC per income stream, it all goes through the one Xero, which is why you don't necessarily need separate bank accounts for each income stream. Okay, so we didn't quite understand how separate personal and business costs in the first few months. So if you have a bank account that you use for business and for personal expenditure, what you can do is you can link that bank account to Xero. It will bring all of the transactions through to Xero ready for you to categorize. But what you can do is, if you recognize that something is a personal transaction and therefore shouldn't be on your returns, you can remove the personal transaction from the bank feed so that you don't have to categorize it. Hope that clears that up. We've also had some queries that we've sort of typed answers in as we're going along. So we've got to confirm in regards to the tax return for 25-26, do we submit this the usual way? Paisley's answer. Do you want me to read them out, Hayes?
Yeah, you can do.
Okay, she's put, yes, this is correct. The 25-26 return is done in the normal way.
Basically, nothing changes. You've still got to file your 25-26 tax return. MTD comes into play from April 2026 for certain individuals.
Yeah, and you may have income streams that are not necessarily reportable under MTD, but will need to be added to your final tax return at the end of that process.
Yeah, and that is basically why you have the quarterly returns plus a digital tax return at the end. So 5 submissions a year, assuming 1 income stream, if you like. Obviously, if you've got 2, self-employment and land and property, you'll have 8 quarterly returns plus a digital tax return at the end. And the digital tax return brings in every other income, interest, employment, all of those types of things in order to calculate the total tax liability for the year that you will then pay in the normal way.
We also had, does this mean we submit 4 quarterly reports and tax bill is paid at the end of the year as usual? And Paisley has said, yeah, the tax payment dates are unchanged. You submit quarterly returns and pay your tax payments as dictated by your digital tax return in the normal way. The quarterly returns are income and expense sharing with HMRC only throughout the year.
Yeah.
And just to touch on that, say the payment dates are unchanged. They're still January and July as normal, dictated by the tax return that's passed. But that's not to say that could change in the future. MTD for VAT has quarterly payments. So for now, we carry on as normal until it changes.
Yeah. And then I had linking a bank account is optional. Can we still use Xero if we do not want to link a bank account? Yes, you can still use Xero without using bank feeds. However, bank feeds are the easiest and quickest way of bringing in your bank transactions. I think, as mentioned on Matthew's slides, on Matthew's presentation, some bank accounts aren't supported and you would have to bring those in manually or via a CSV upload. But it is by far the quickest method to link the bank. And it is secure. There's never been a breach, as Matthew said. Got some new questions coming through. Missed the beginning of talk. If income was over 50k in 24-25, but will be less in 25-26, will I still have to implement this?
It's a great question. And the answer is yes. Unfortunately, MTD doesn't dictate that. So your 24-25 return dictated whether you came in or not. You have to then, if to come back out of MTD in the future, you have to be below the current limit for 3 consecutive tax years. So if you're in 24-25, you then have to start filing MTD even though you're no longer over 50,000. So the next limit being 30, you'd have to be below that one in the next year, and so on and so on. So unfortunately, there's no get out unless you're below the limits, and you must do the quarterly returns and MTD.
And then we have, how do the MTD submissions affect the payment on account in July?
Another great one. Basically, it just gives you more information to be able to plan your payments on account. You've always had the ability to review your payments on account to see whether they're at the correct level. All this by MTD, it's giving you that ability to see what your income is throughout the year. So your payments on account are obviously dictated by your last tax return. You will pay those as normal. If you suspect by doing MTD quarterly that your income is going to be lower in the next tax year, you can reduce them. You never increase payments on account. They're set at a level, but it will also give you that information as to whether you're expecting a higher tax bill going forward. So it is great for knowing whether you've got fluctuation in tax up or down as you go throughout the years.
Okay. Could you write down the live verbal answers to the Q&A questions and include them with the copy of the slides, please? So you will be getting a recording of this webinar. It is being recorded, so you'll be able to get the answers that we've mentioned.
Yeah.
Also missed beginning of talk. Currently use QuickBooks. Will this be okay for MTD?
Yes, in summary, yes, QuickBooks will be MTD compliant. Yeah.
And that's the lot of the minute.
Okay, great. We'll just keep an eye on that.
Sorry, can I just throw another one? One thing I get asked a lot is, well, what happens if I just do a quarterly submission and don't put anything on it, income or expenses, because there's no penalties? And the answer to that is, don't do it, because whilst you're not missing the quarterly submission deadline, you're getting it in, even if it's got nil income, nil expenses, you're failing on the keeping digital records part. And that is where you will get penalised. So the whole point of MTD is about keeping accurate records. So even if you send in a submission because you haven't done it, it's in the eyes of HMRC, it won't be acceptable, and you should keep your digital records and do as an accurate quarterly submission.
That's a great point. I think, as we said at the start, this is about digital record keeping. You cannot ignore it. If you're over those thresholds, as Paisley said, you do need to start reporting from April on a quarterly basis. Even if you've fallen under those thresholds in 26, you're still going to have to report if you're over in 25, until you then drop under those thresholds. But the thresholds are coming down anyway, so it would be logical that you would still be in making tax digital in 26 and 27 and 28 anyway, unless you cease trading in that period. I guess just to wrap up, we'll have a quick review of the questions again just before we close, because I think there's a few more coming through. Just to wrap up, I guess, before that point, if you want us to register you for making tax digital, please contact us. And as Paisley says, we can do that for you, but you can obviously do that yourself. If you want to use Xero, and you're happy with picking that up and doing the MTD filings yourself, but you want some training on how to use Xero and a more in-depth training session on how to use Xero, again, please contact us. We are going to run a separate webinar after this one, which Sarah will run, but that will be a very in-depth specific training session purely on how to use Xero and how to use the features of Xero and how to get the receipts and payments and connect the bank feeds, etc. And obviously the process of how to show you how to do a submission. So please contact us. We are going to run a separate webinar on that. There will be a small charge for that separate webinar, but we'll cover that off in due course. If you don't feel comfortable with making tax digital and you don't want to do any of the quarterly reporting yourself, again, please contact us. Please contact your account manager or your director. We will contact you and have a separate conversation with you on a one-to-one basis and look at what we need to do that reporting for you on a one-to-one basis, because that will be a very bespoke service for whatever your individual requirements are for making tax digital. So please, again, come back to us on that after this webinar. As I said earlier, keep an eye on all the socials, keep an eye on our feeds and our website for any further updates on this. The first filing deadline is the 7th of August. So we have time to get everybody into the Making Tax Digital process, but the reporting of it does obviously start from the 6th of April. So we would need to do a little bit of work just to get the records back to the 6th of April updated, but we do have until the 7th of August for the first official submission. So in terms of time, we do have plenty of time to help everybody and get them signed up and get them into Xero and get all of the returns updated. Just to reiterate, the Xero Simple package, as Matthew said, is the Making Tax Digital design solution almost in Xero. I think that retails at £7 a month, Matthew, plus VAT. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. I think we've got a few more questions that have come through.
We do. Do we have to have digital copies of every receipt and invoice? No, you don't have to have digital copies. You can keep the paper copies and not attach them in Xero. That's absolutely fine. You can keep the paper copies. What this is aimed at is actually getting the record keeping to be digital. You're fine to not have to scan everything in or use the mobile app. Definitely.
But please keep your records as normal.
Yeah. I've seen some intro offers on subscriptions. Are they still available?
Matthew?
Yeah. I mean, there's always an offer on the website, but also the guys at Prime also have a bank there. They've got some subscriptions ready to use, so reach out to the guys and see which one's best price. I would say, obviously, better to go through Prime if you can do for it. You guys are cheaper.
Yeah, we've got a bank of subscriptions for Making Tax Digital, so we can actually set the Xero subscription up for you and help you with that process. So again, it's something that we can do that's going to make your life a little bit easier and not have to worry about trying to get the Xero set up. If we set it up for you, also, we're automatically added into your subscription, so we've already got that access. So that makes the training and the ongoing sort of maintenance and fielding of questions and queries as you go through much easier, because we've got an access into your Xero subscription, so any of our staff can then immediately jump into that database and you can ask them questions and we can see it on the screen at the same time as you can.
Yeah. Do we have to keep digital copies of all the credit card receipts along with the statement itself? No, again, you don't have to keep digital copies of anything. They just have to be recorded digitally. So as long as you keep the paper statement and the backing for all of the expenditure on that, that's absolutely fine. If you want to do away with the paper copies and attach them in Xero, you can, unless it's something that you might need to return. Not sure you can pop into couriers with your Xero app and say, here you go, I bought this. So yeah, it's completely up to you. There's no, there's no mandation of having the images there, because like Matthew said, all HMRC are getting is those front sheet figures. They're not getting any of the detail behind it. They're not going to get any images of what you've put in there. I guess the advantage of doing that would be that we can log into Xero, like Paul said, and we can see all of the attachments, which means we're not bugging you for copies of invoices, or you're not having to bring in a cardboard box of records for us to have a look through because it's attached. But yeah, it's completely your choice on that. What if an income stream ceases and there are no transactions? Do we then submit a Xero submission?
So I think there's two parts to that question. So I want to cover. If your tax return for 24-25, say, triggered an MTD, but you're going to cease trading, for instance, because you're a sole trader in 25, 26, 27, because you do your MTD. There's no way, just because you're ceasing, there's no way not to go into MTD. Your tax return dictated you had to go in. You must file an MTD quarterly return up to that point of cessation. My understanding is I think you can apply to come out once you're done, obviously once you've ceased, but you must do all your MTD reporting up to that point. You cannot, it's not an exemption from coming out of MTD now just because you're planning to cease.
That's the last one.
Okay, great. I think we're actually almost perfect for timing now. So as we said, a copy of the webinar will be available. We'll send that to everybody that was a participant on the call. That will cover off the Q&A questions as well. I think, again, just to reiterate the same point, please contact us if you need any help, if you have any questions, if you want to use Xero. We can provide the training with a separate webinar. We can do the registrations with MTD. If you don't feel comfortable with MTD at all, we can pick up the record keeping and submissions for you. That will need a separate conversation with your contact at Prime Accountants. Thanks for joining. I hope you found it informative, and I hope you found the answers to the questions that you needed. Good luck to everybody with Making Tax Digital, but we are here to help you. Please contact us in due course. Have a lovely rest of the day, everybody. Thank you.